The sun was barely up, but the air already felt heavy with Karen's venom. Our cul-de-sac, a quiet slice of suburban hell in Oak Ridge Estates, had been her kingdom for years. Karen Whitaker, with her peroxide blonde bob and a smile sharp enough to cut glass, was the HOA president who ruled with an iron fist and a clipboard. She'd fine you for a mailbox that leaned a half-inch too far left, or for grass that dared grow a blade too long. But this was personal. My sister, Ellie, had been in a wheelchair since a car accident 3 years ago, and the ramp we'd built to her front door was her lifeline. It wasn't just concrete, it was her freedom. So when I woke up to find that ramp scarred with acid burns, the edges melted like candle wax, I knew exactly who'd done it. Karen's signature was all over it, from the smug note taped to our door non-compliant structure, remove or face fines, to the chemical stench still lingering in the air. I stood there, fists clenched, staring at the ruined ramp. Ellie rolled up behind me, her voice soft but trembling with rage. "She's gone too far, Jake. This isn't about rules. She hates me." I turned to her, my little sister, her eyes blazing despite the wheelchair that confined her. Ellie was tougher than me most days, but this cut deep. Karen had been gunning for us since we moved in. She'd called Ellie's ramp an eyesore at the last HOA meeting, her lips curling like she'd tasted something sour. I'd argued back, citing the Americans with Disabilities Act, but Karen just smirked and said, "We'll see about that." Now here we were, staring at her handiwork. Acid. Who the hell does that? I crouched down, running my fingers over the pitted concrete. "She's going to pay for this, Ellie. I swear it." My voice was low, but the fire in my gut was roaring. Ellie nodded, her jaw tight. "Don't just get mad, Jake. Get even." And that's when the plan started forming, a spark in the back of my mind that would soon ignite into something Karen couldn't outrun. First, I needed evidence. Karen wasn't stupid. She'd covered her tracks. No security cameras caught her in the act, and the note was typed, no handwriting to trace. But I knew her type. She'd slip up, leave a crumb somewhere. I started by canvassing the neighbors. Old Mrs. Callahan across the street, who spent her days glued to her window, was my first stop. "Saw her car idling near your place at 3 a.m., she whispered, her eyes glinting with gossip. "Didn't see her do it, but she was there all right." That was something, but not enough. I needed more. Next, I hit up Tommy, the neighborhood's resident tech nerd, a gangly kid who'd once hacked his high school's grading system for fun. "Yo, Tommy," I said, leaning against his garage door. "You still got those drones with the night vision cams?" He grinned, pushing his glasses up. "What's in it for me, Jake?" I slid him $100 and a promise to mow his lawn for a month. "Deal," he said, already pulling up footage from his drone's late-night sweeps. Sure enough, there was Karen's SUV, parked 2 houses down from ours, the timestamp reading 2:47 a.m. No clear shot of her pouring the acid, but it was damning enough to start building a case. I wasn't just going to the cops, though. Oh no. Karen didn't get to slink away with a slap on the wrist. She'd made this personal, so I was going to hit her where it hurt, her precious HOA board. She'd ruled it like a queen for years, stacking it with her cronies, Bob, the spineless accountant who nodded at everything she said, and Linda, the nosy realtor who'd rat out her own kids for a parking violation. But I'd been in this neighborhood long enough to know its secrets. Karen's board wasn't as loyal as she thought, and I had an ace up my sleeve. See, I'd been working the neighbors for months, ever since Karen tried to fine us for Ellie's ramp the first time. I'd started small, helping Mr. Rodriguez fix his fence, bringing cookies to the single mom down the street, chatting up the old-timers at the community picnic. People liked me. They trusted me, and most importantly, they were sick of Karen's reign of terror. I'd been quietly collecting proxy votes, those little slips of paper that let you vote on someone's behalf at HOA meetings. Karen didn't know it, but I had a majority in my pocket, enough to flip the board and boot her out. The trick was timing. I needed to strike when she was at her weakest, when her own arrogance would bury her. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, Ellie across from me, a pizza box between us. "You really think you can take her down?" she asked, picking at a slice. I leaned back, grinning. "Oh, I'm not just taking her down, Elle. I'm going to make her wish she'd never stepped foot in this neighborhood." Ellie raised an eyebrow, a smirk tugging at her lips. "You're such a drama queen." I laughed, but inside I was deadly serious. Karen had crossed a line, and I was going to make her choke on her own rules. The next morning, I got a call from Tommy. "Dude, you're not going to believe this," he said, his voice practically vibrating. I checked the dark web forums, local ones, you know. Someone's selling industrial-grade acid, same kind that'd eat through concrete. Guess who's been DMing the seller? My heart skipped. "No way," Tommy laughed. "Yep, Karen's emails all over it. She used a fake name, but her IP's sloppy, traced it right to her house." I could have kissed that nerdy little genius. This was the smoking gun. Armed with Tommy's evidence, I started phase 2, turning the neighborhood against her. I didn't blast it out yet. That'd spook her. Instead, I played subtle. I accidentally let slip to Mrs. Callahan that Karen had been seen near my place the night of the vandalism. By noon, the rumor mill was churning. Neighbors whispered at mailboxes, shot Karen dirty looks as she power-walked her poodle. She didn't notice at first, too busy strutting around like she owned the place. But I saw the cracks forming. Her smile was tighter, her eyes darting. She knew something was up. At the next HOA meeting, Karen was in rare form, banging her gavel like she was judge, jury, and executioner. "Item 1, she snapped. "Unauthorized structures. The ramp at 142 Oak Ridge is still non-compliant." I stood up, calm as could be. "Actually, Karen, that ramp's protected under federal law. Maybe you should read up on the ADA before you start throwing fines around." The room went quiet. Karen's face turned beet red. "This isn't about laws, Jake. It's about aesthetics," I smirked. "Yeah? Like the aesthetics of acid burns?" A gasp rippled through the crowd. Karen's gavel froze mid-air. "What are you implying?" she hissed. I just shrugged. "Oh, nothing. Just wondering who'd have access to industrial acid around here. You got any ideas, Karen?" The meeting erupted into chaos. Neighbors started shouting, demanding answers. Karen tried to regain control, but her voice was drowned out. I sat back, watching her squirm. This was just the beginning. I had her on the ropes, but I wasn't ready to deliver the knockout yet. I needed more votes, more allies, and one final piece of leverage to make sure Karen's fall was spectacular. Ellie was waiting for me when I got home, her eyes gleaming. "You're playing with fire, big brother." I grinned, tossing my jacket on the couch. "Good. Let's see how she likes getting burned." The neighborhood was a powder keg, and I'd just lit the fuse. After that HOA meeting, Karen's grip on Oak Ridge Estates was slipping, and she knew it. Her face, usually a mask of smug control, was starting to crack. Her eyes darted like a cornered animal's, and her voice had a brittle edge when she snapped at neighbors for minor infractions. She was still the queen of her little fiefdom, but the peasants were whispering rebellion. I'd planted the seed with that acid comment, and the rumor mill was doing the rest. Mrs. Callahan had told her bridge club, who told their book club, who told the guy who mowed half the lawns on the E block. By the end of the week, Karen couldn't walk her poodle without someone shooting her a side eye or muttering under their breath. And me? I was just getting started. Ellie was my anchor in all this. She'd roll into the living room every night, her wheelchair gliding silently over the hardwood, and grill me like a detective. "What's the next move, Jake? You gonna expose her or what?" she'd ask, her voice sharp with impatience. I'd lean back in my chair, sipping a beer, and grin. "Patience, Elle. You don't kill a snake by cutting off its tail. You go for the head." She'd roll her eyes but smile, knowing I was cooking something big. And I was. The evidence Tommy had dug up, Karen's sloppy, dark web purchase of industrial acid, was gold, but I wasn't ready to play that card yet. I needed to tighten the noose, make her think she was still in control while I pulled the strings. My next step was to turn her own allies against her. Karen's board was a trio of loyal lapdogs: Bob, the accountant who'd sell his soul for a balanced ledger; Linda, the realtor who'd narc on her own grandmother for a cracked driveway; and Greg, the retired cop who thought Karen was God's gift to law and order. They enforced her every whim, signing off on fines and violations like trained seals. But loyalty in a place like this? It's thinner than cheap wallpaper. I started with Bob. I caught him at the community mailbox, fumbling with a stack of bills. "Yo, Bob," I said, casual as could be. "You ever get tired of Karen's crap?" He froze, his bald head gleaming under the midday sun. "What are you talking about, Jake?" His voice was nervous, like he'd been caught stealing cookies. I leaned in, lowering my voice. "I'm talking about her running this place like a dictator. You know she's got dirt on you, right? That creative accounting you did for her last year?" Bob's face went white.
"I don't know what you—" I cut him off with a grin. "Relax, man. I'm not here to snitch, but think about it. You really want to go down with her ship?" I slid a proxy vote form into his hand. "Sign this and you're free. I'll handle the rest."
He stared at the paper like it was a live grenade, but I knew I had him. Bob was a coward, and cowards flip fast. Linda was trickier. She was Karen's right hand, a gossip with a nose for trouble. I needed to play her ego, not her fear. I invited her over for coffee, playing the good neighbor. "Linda," I said, pouring her a mug, "you ever think about running the HOA yourself? You're smarter than Karen, and everyone knows it." She preened, her fake lashes fluttering. "Well, I've had ideas, but Karen's got the board locked down." I leaned in, conspiratorial. "Not for long. I've got votes, Linda. Enough. To shake things up. You in?" Her eyes lit up like a slot machine hitting jackpot. "What's the catch?" she asked. I shrugged. "No catch, just a chance to be the queen instead of the servant." By the time she left, she'd signed a proxy vote and was already plotting her victory speech. Greg, the ex-cop, was the toughest nut to crack. He was loyal to Karen out of some warped sense of duty, but I knew his weak spot, his son, a hothead who'd been caught drag racing in the neighborhood last year. Karen had let it slide, but only because Greg begged her. I cornered him at the hardware store, buying paint for his shed. "Greg," I said, clapping him on the shoulder, "your boy's lucky Karen didn't fine him into next year for that stunt he pulled." Shame if that got dragged up at the next meeting. His jaw tightened. "You threatening me, Jake?" I shook my head, all innocence. "Nah, just saying. New board, new rules. You want a clean slate for your kid? Sign here." I handed him a proxy vote. He glared at me, but he took the pen. 3 for 3. With the board in my pocket, I turned to the neighborhood itself. Karen's rain had pissed off more people than I'd realized. There was Mr. Rodriguez, who'd been fined for his unapproved fence color, the Wilsons, who'd gotten a $500 citation for leaving their trash cans out an hour too long, and Mrs. Patel, who'd been harassed over her garden gnomes. I went door to door, proxy forms in hand, spinning a tale of a better HOA, one that didn't rule by fear. "We can end this," I told them. "One vote, and Karen's gone." By the end of the week, I had 62% of the neighborhood's votes locked up. More than enough to call a special meeting and rewrite the game, but Karen wasn't going down without a fight. She must have sensed the tide turning, because she doubled down. The next morning, I woke up to a new violation notice taped to my door. $2,000 fine for vandalism to the ramp. The nerve of her, blaming us for her own crime. Ellie read the notice and laughed, a bitter sound. "She's desperate," she said, tossing it on the table. "Good, let's push her over the edge." I decided to bait her. I posted on the neighborhood's private Facebook group, a risky move, but calculated. "Anyone know who's got access to industrial acid?" Asking for a friend with a ruined ramp. I attached a blurry still from Tommy's drone footage, just enough to show Karen's SUV without implicating her directly. The comments exploded. Neighbors speculated, some outright accusing Karen. She responded within an hour, all caps. "This
is defamation. I'll sue you all." Classic Karen. Overplay your hand and show your guilt. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The neighborhood was doing the work for me. That night, Tommy called again.
"Dude, she's freaking out. I hacked her Ring camera audio. She's yelling at Bob and Linda, accusing them of betraying her." I grinned, picturing her pacing her pristine living room, her empire crumbling. "What's she saying?" I asked. Tommy laughed. "Oh, it's gold. You spineless worms better back me, or I'll tell everyone about your shady deals." "She's losing it, man." I told him to keep recording. Every word was another nail in her coffin. The special HOA meeting was set for Friday, 3 days away. I spent those days tightening my grip. I met with Bob, Linda, and Greg separately, reassuring them they'd have a place on the new board if they played ball. Bob was sweating bullets. Linda was already picking out her president's gavel, and Greg just nodded, his face grim. I also rallied the neighbors, organizing a group to show up at the meeting in force. "Bring your violation notices," I told them. "Let's show her what she's done to us." The response was overwhelming. People were ready to storm the castle. The night before the meeting, Ellie and I sat on our porch, the ruined ramp, still a jagged scar in front of us. "You think she'll see it coming?" Ellie asked, her voice quiet. I looked at her, my tough-as-nails sister, and felt a surge of pride. "She's too busy looking in the mirror to see the knife at her back," I said. Ellie smirked. "You're such a drama queen." But her eyes said she believed in me, and that was enough. Friday morning, I got a text from Tommy. "Check your email, you're going to love this." I opened it to find a video file. Karen, caught on her own Ring camera, ranting about teaching that cripple a lesson and showing Jake who's boss. My blood boiled, but my heart sang. This was it, the final piece. Karen was done, and she didn't even know it yet. The morning of the special HOA meeting, Oak Ridge Estates buzzed with attention you could cut with a knife. Neighbors whispered over picket fences, their eyes darting toward Karen's house, where her SUV sat in the driveway like a smug trophy. She'd been laying low since her unhinged Facebook outburst, but I knew she was plotting. Karen wasn't. The type to go quietly. She'd come to the meeting armed with her gavel and a superiority complex, ready to crush any rebellion. But I had her number. The video Tommy sent, her own voice spewing venom about Ellie, was burning a hole in my inbox. It was my trump card, and I was itching to play it, but timing was everything. I needed her to think she was winning, right up until the moment her world collapsed. Ellie was up early, her wheelchair parked by the kitchen window as she sipped coffee and stared at the ruined ramp. "You sure about this, Jake?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with something heavier. Hope, maybe, or fear of disappointment. I slid into the chair across from her, meeting her gaze. "Sure as hell. Karen's done ruling this place like her personal prison camp." Ellie's lips twitched into a half-smile. "You're such a drama queen," she said, but her eyes were fierce. "Just don't screw it up." I laughed, but inside, the pressure was on. This wasn't just about me or Ellie, it was about every neighbor Karen had bullied, fined, and belittled. I couldn't let them down. The community center was packed by 6 p.m., the air thick with anticipation. Folding chairs creaked under the weight of neighbors, some clutching violation notices like battle scars. Mrs. Callahan sat in the front row, her knitting needles clicking like a war drum. Mr. Rodriguez was there, his arms crossed, still pissed about his unapproved fence. The Wilsons, Mrs. Patel, and a dozen others filled the room, their faces a mix of anger and hope. I'd rallied them over the past few days, promising a new HOA, one that didn't fine you for breathing wrong. They were ready to fight, and I was their general. Karen strode in at 6:05, her heels clicking like gunshots on the linoleum. She wore a crisp white blazer, her blonde bob sprayed into submission, and a smile that could curdle milk. Bob, Linda, and Greg trailed behind her, their faces tight. I caught Bob's eye, and he looked away, sweat beading on his forehead. Linda adjusted her scarf, her eyes flicking toward me like she was sizing up her throne. Greg just stared straight ahead, his cop face unreadable. Karen took her seat at the head table, banging her gavel with a flourish.
"Order!" she snapped, her voice dripping with authority. "This meeting is called to address the rampant non-compliance in our community, starting with the illegal structure at 142 Oak Ridge." I stood up, slow and deliberate, my proxy votes burning a hole in my pocket.
"Actually, Karen," I said, my voice calm but loud enough to carry, "I called this meeting, and it's not about my sister's ramp. It's about you." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Karen's eyes narrowed, her gavel hovering like a guillotine. "Excuse me?" she hissed. I smiled, leaning into the moment. "You heard me. We're here to discuss your leadership, or lack of it. See, we've got some questions about your late-night hobbies, like, say, pouring acid on a disabled person's ramp." The room erupted. Neighbors shouted, some standing, others pointing at Karen. Mrs. Callahan yelled, "You're a disgrace!" Karen's face went from red to purple, her gavel slamming down. "This is slander. I'll have you arrested, Jake." But her voice cracked, and I knew I had her. I held up a hand, silencing the crowd. "Let's talk facts, Karen. Your SUV was parked near my house at 2:47 a.m., the night the ramp was
vandalized. We've got drone footage, and then there's your little shopping spree on the dark web, industrial acid.
delivered to a P.O. box you thought was untraceable. Sloppy, Karen, real sloppy." Her mouth opened, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. Bob shifted in his seat, looking like he wanted to bolt. Linda's eyes widened, her loyalty wavering. Greg just stared at his hands. I pressed on. "And let's not forget the audio from your own Ring camera. What was it you called my sister? A cripple who needed a lesson?" I pulled out my phone, hitting play. Karen's voice filled the room, shrill and unmistakable. "I'll teach that cripple a lesson. Jake thinks he's smart. I'll show him who's boss." The crowd gasped, then roared. Mrs. Patel stood, shaking her fist. "You're a monster!" Karen's face drained of colour, her gavel slipping from her hand. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, but no one was buying it. I stepped forward, pulling the proxy votes from my pocket. "Here's the thing. Karen, this neighborhood's done with you. I've got 62% of the votes right here, signed and notarized, enough to dissolve this board and call for a new election, effective immediately." I turned to the crowd. "All in favor?"
Hands shot up, voices shouting, "Aye!" Karen lunged forward, her voice shrill. "You can't do this! I'm the president!" I smirked. Not anymore. The vote was unanimous. Karen's board was out. Bob, Linda, and Greg didn't even fight it. They just sat there, shell-shocked. Karen screamed, "This is a coup! I'll sue you all!" But the crowd was done listening.
They booed her out of the room, Mrs. Callahan chucking a ball of yarn at her retreating back. It was chaos, but it was beautiful. Ellie, who'd been watching from the back, rolled up to me, her eyes shining. "Not bad, drama queen," she said, punching my arm. I grinned. Told you I'd get her. But I wasn't done. Karen's fall from the board was just the first blow. She'd broken something in Ellie, in all of us, and I wanted her to feel that pain. Over the next week, I worked with Tommy to leak the Ring camera footage to the local news. By Friday, Karen's face was plastered across Channel 7, the headlines screaming, "HOA President Caught in Vandalism Scandal." Her real estate business tanked overnight. Clients dropped her. Her signs vanished from lawns. The cops got involved, too, thanks to Tommy's dark web evidence. They couldn't pin the acid attack on her directly, but they hit her with charges for illegal chemical purchases. Karen was lawyered up, but the damage was done. Her name was poison. The new HOA board, me, Mrs. Patel and Mr. Rodriguez got to work fast. We repealed Karen's draconian rules, starting with the fines for aesthetic violations. Ellie's ramp was rebuilt, stronger and sleeker, paid for by a community fundraiser. Neighbors stopped by daily, bringing casseroles and apologies, like they were atoning for letting Karen run wild for so long. Ellie soaked it up, her smile brighter than I'd seen in years. "You're enjoying this too much," I teased her one night, tossing a pillow at her. She caught it, grinning. "Damn right I am, but the story doesn't end there." A month later, I got a call from Tommy, his voice low and urgent. "Jake, you're not going to believe this. Karen's back." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean back?" He hesitated. "She's running for city council, and she's got a new angle, playing the victim, saying you framed her." I sat back, my mind racing. Karen, that snake, had slithered out of her hole, ready to
poison another pond. But this time, I wasn't just a neighbor with a grudge.
I had a neighborhood behind me, a sister who'd taught me how to fight, and a plan that was about to make Karen wish she'd stayed gone. Karen's comeback hit like a punch we didn't see coming. After her spectacular fall, booted from the
HOA, humiliated on the local news, and dodging criminal charges, she'd vanished from Oak Ridge Estates.
Her house went dark, her poodle stopped yapping, and her SUV was nowhere in sight. We thought she'd slunk off to lick her wounds, maybe moved to some other suburb to terrorize. But Karen Whitaker wasn't the type to stay down. She was a cockroach, scuttling back into the light with a new scheme. City Council. And she was spinning a story so vile it made my blood boil. She was the victim framed by a vindictive neighbor, that'd be me, who'd faked the acid attack to ruin her. The nerve of her, rewriting history to paint herself as a martyr. But I wasn't about to let her claw her way back into power. This time, I was going to bury her for good. Ellie was the first to spot the campaign signs popping up like weeds on the edge of town. Karen Whitaker, Justice for Our Community, they read, with her smiling face airbrushed to oblivion. Ellie rolled into the kitchen, her phone glowing with a photo of one. "She's got some balls," she said, tossing the phone onto the table. I stared at the screen, my jaw tight. "She's got no shame, that's what she's got." Ellie leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "So, what's the plan, drama queen? You gonna let her rewrite the story?" I smirked, already feeling the gears turning. "Not a chance. She wants to play dirty. I'll show her how it's done." The first step was reconnaissance. Karen was holding a campaign rally at the community center, the same place where I'd toppled her HOA empire. The irony wasn't lost on me. I enlisted Tommy, who was practically vibrating with excitement at the chance to dig into her digital dirt again.
"I'm on it, Jake," he said, his fingers already flying across his keyboard. "Give me a day, and I'll have a whole campaign laid bare." Meanwhile, I rallied the neighborhood. Mrs. Callahan, Mr. Rodriguez, Mrs. Patel, and the Wilsons
Were all in, their anger reignited by Karen's audacity. "She thinks she can just waltz back in," Mrs. Patel said, her voice sharp as she chopped onions for a curry she was bringing to our strategy meeting. "We'll show her." Tommy came, through in less than 12 hours. "Check this," he said, sliding his laptop toward me. Karen's campaign was funded by a shady developer, some guy named Vince Russo, who'd been trying to buy up land in Oak Ridge for a strip mall. Karen had been cozying up to him for months, promising to fast-track his permits if she won a council seat. Tommy had emails, texts, even a grainy photo of them meeting at a diner outside town. "She's selling us out," I said, my voice low. Tommy grinned. "And that's not all. She's been posting on some sketchy forums, stirring up her old HOA cronies to smear you online. They're calling you a liar, a thug, even saying you faked Ellie's disability for sympathy." I laughed, cold and sharp. "Oh, she's going to regret that." The rally was Saturday, and the community centre was packed again, but this time it was a different crowd. Half curious onlookers, half Karen loyalists clutching her campaign flyers. She stood at the podium, her white blazer swapped for a navy pantsuit, her voice dripping with fake sincerity. "I've been slandered, attacked, driven from my home," she said, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. "But I'm here for you, to fight for justice." The loyalists cheered, but the rest of the room was uneasy, whispers snaking through the crowd. I stood in the back with Ellie, my arms crossed, waiting for my moment. Mrs. Callahan, bless her, didn't wait for permission. She stood up, her knitting needles still in hand, and shouted, "Justice, you poured acid on a disabled girl's ramp." The room gasped. Karen's face froze, but she recovered fast. "That's a lie, and you—"
"Know it, I was framed."
I stepped forward, my voice cutting through the noise. "Framed, huh? Then why's your email all over dark web orders for industrial acid? Why's your Ring camera catching you calling my sister a cripple?" I held up my phone, the audio ready to play. Karen's eyes widened, but before I could hit play, she screeched, "Security! Remove this man!" But the crowd wasn't having it. Mr. Rodriguez stood, waving his violation notice from Karen's HOA days.
"You fined me $1,000 for a fence you didn't like." Mrs. Patel was next, her voice trembling with rage. "You called my gnomes trash." The Wilsons joined in, then others, their voices rising into a chorus of grievances. Karen's security. 2 beefy guys in cheap suits hesitated, sensing the tide turning.
I seized the moment, plugging my phone into the podium sound system. Karen's voice blared through the speakers. "I'll teach that cripple a lesson. Jake thinks he's smart."
I'll show him who's boss. The room went dead silent.
Then erupted in boos. Karen's face crumpled, her hands shaking as she gripped the podium. I didn't stop there. I projected Tommy's emails onto the wall, Karen's deal with Vince Russo, her promises to sell out the neighborhood for a quick buck. "This is your justice, Karen?" I said, my voice calm but lethal.
Trading our homes for strip malls. The crowd turned feral, chanting, "Shame! Shame!" Karen tried to speak, but her voice was drowned out. One of her loyalists, a wiry guy with a bad comb-over, lunged at me, shouting, "You're a liar!"
Ellie, quick as lightning, rolled forward and accidentally rammed his shin with her wheelchair. "Oops," she said, smirking as he howled. The crowd laughed, and even the security guys cracked a smile. Karen bolted, her heels clacking as she fled the stage. But I wasn't done. I'd been working with a local reporter, a guy named Sam, who'd been sniffing around since the HOA scandal broke. He was waiting outside, camera crew in tow. As Karen stumbled into the parking lot, Sam shoved a mic in her face. "Ms. Whitaker, care to comment on the emails linking you to Vince Russo?" Karen froze, then snapped, "No comment, you vulture!" She shoved past him, but the cameras caught every second. By morning, the footage was viral, trending on X with hashtags like "Used Karen Crumbles" and "Ho Karma." The fallout was swift. Russo dropped Karen like a hot potato, his company issuing a statement, denying any wrongdoing. Her campaign collapsed, her signs vanishing overnight. The police reopened the acid case, armed with Tommy's evidence and public pressure. Karen lawyered up again, but her reputation was radioactive. Neighbors stopped by our house with thank yous, cookies, casseroles, even a bottle of whiskey from Mr. Rodriguez. Ellie soaked it up, her smile brighter than ever. "You're enjoying this too much," I teased, tossing her a cookie. She caught it, grinning. "Damn right I am," but the real twist came a week later. Tommy called, his voice low. "Jake, you're not going to believe this!" My heart skipped. "What now?" He hesitated. "Karen's gone, like gone. Her house is empty, her stuff's cleared out. But I found something weird on her IP trail. She's been wiring money to an offshore account. Looks like she was planning to skip town all along. Russo was just the start." I sat back, my mind racing. Karen hadn't just been playing for power. She'd been setting up an exit strategy, ready to burn Oak Ridge to the ground and run. And then the bombshell. Tommy found a draft email in her trash folder, addressed to a lawyer, admitting she'd hired someone to pour the acid. She'd planned to frame me from the start, but her hired thug had botched the job, leaving her exposed. I shared the email with Sam, who broke the story wide open. Karen was arrested 2 states over, caught trying to board a flight to the Caymans. The neighborhood threw a party the day the news hit, Mrs. Callahan leading a toast to the end of tyranny. Ellie raised her glass, her eyes locked on mine. "Not bad, drama queen," she said. I clinked her glass, grinning. "Told you I'd get her." Oak Ridge was ours again, free from Karen's shadow, but I kept Tommy's number on speed dial. You never know when another snake might slither into town.